Have you ever wondered why we eat exactly what we eat today? Why certain dishes became classics while others disappeared from culinary history? Did you know that carrots were once grown not for their sweet root, but for their fragrant leaves? Or can you imagine a world without French fries, pizza, or chocolate? Incredibly, all these products, so familiar to us, were once exotic, and their journey to our tables was full of unexpected twists and innovations. Behind every dish, behind every ingredient, there are people who were not afraid to experiment, break the rules, and create something new. It is about them, the culinary revolutionaries, that we will talk about today. Ready for an exciting journey into the history of gastronomy? Then let's go. So, who are these culinary revolutionaries we are talking about today? These are not just cooks who know how to cook deliciously. These are people who, with their ideas, inventions, or approaches, radically change the way food is prepared, consumed, or even our perception of food. They expanded the boundaries of what is possible in the kitchen, challenged traditions, created new trends, and inspired entire generations of cooks and gourmets. From the bold innovators of past centuries to modern-day experimenters, their impact on gastronomic culture is invaluable. Let's start with a figure whose contribution to cooking can be compared to the foundation of a magnificent building. Marie-Antoine Carême, who lived in the 19th century, was not just a cook. He became a symbol of the era, an architect of haute cuisine who elevated cooking to the level of art and science. At a time when cooking often remained outside the attention of the intellectual elite, Carême managed to prove that food preparation is not just a craft, but an expression of harmony, logic, beauty, and discipline. Born in Paris in 1784, Carême grew up in a poor family that abandoned him in his childhood. But even despite the difficulties, he was able to find his calling in the kitchen. In his teens, he began working in Parisian bakeries and culinary workshops, and very quickly discovered a unique talent not only for cooking, but also for food styling. From his youth, he impressed his contemporaries with exquisite cakes that were shaped like temples, fortresses, ruins, and palaces. It was then that the concept of pièce de monter was born, a culinary sculpture made of sugar, marzipan, or dough, combining the aesthetics of architecture and the taste of dessert. Carême was a true aesthete. He admired ancient architecture, studied drawings, created sketches, and used classical proportions in the design of his dishes. But his contribution was not limited to beauty. He strived for systemicity, which was a revolutionary idea at the time. In a world where cooks often worked without a clear structure, he proposed the concept of organizing the culinary process. He developed a clear hierarchy in the kitchen, from the chef to the commis, which became the prototype of the modern kitchen brigade. This structure made it possible to clearly distribute responsibilities, avoid chaos, and improve the quality of dishes. Many cooks of the 21st century still work according to this principle. Another achievement of Carême was his classification of sauces, which radically changed the perception of culinary technique. He identified 4 main sauces, or as they were later called, mother sauces: béchamel, velouté, espagnole, and tomato. These sauces became the base from which the preparation of hundreds of other variations began. Later, in the 20th century, Auguste Escoffier, another prominent cook, would add one more basic sauce, hollandaise, and together they would form the 5 mother sauces that are still used today. But it was Carême who laid this foundation, making it the cornerstone of culinary education. His approach to food was like to a living art. Carême didn't just cook, he built. Every dish, every dessert, every decoration on the plate had meaning. His creations are a combination of French elegance and mathematical precision. He could work for hours on the design of one dessert, perfecting it. For him, the aesthetics of the dish were as important as its taste. He believed that food should bring pleasure not only to the stomach, but also to the eyes, mind, and even the soul. Carême worked at the highest level of society at that time, His clients included members of European royal families, including the Russian Tsar Alexander I, the English Prince Regent, and the French diplomat Talleyrand. It was for Talleyrand that he created the most exquisite dinners, where politics and cooking went hand in hand. Carême's dishes became an instrument of diplomacy, an expression of power, taste, and status. But despite his success, Carême remained a scientist at heart. He wrote a lot. His culinary books were not just collections of recipes. They were treatises on the philosophy of gastronomy. In them, he described cooking techniques, systematized knowledge, and introduced terms and rules. Among his most famous works are An Historical Sketch of French Cuisine and The Art of French Cuisine in the 19th Century. These books became the basis for the formation of professional culinary education in Europe. Carême dreamed that cuisine would be an intellectual discipline, equal to art, music, or architecture. And he succeeded. He left behind not only recipes, but also an entire ideology based on order, harmony, and the aesthetic perception of food. His legacy lives on in every restaurant that respects classical standards, in every culinary institute that studies sauces, and in every cook who strives not just to feed, but to impress. Today, Carême's name sounds like a symbol of sophistication, discipline, and professionalism. And although his life was cut short quite early, he died in 1833 at the age of 48. His ideas have survived for centuries. Carême proved that food is not only about taste, but also about culture, history, and the human spirit, which is capable of rising from the deepest depths to create a masterpiece. Next on our list is Auguste Escoffier, a prominent figure without whom it is impossible to imagine the development of modern gastronomy. He lived at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, a period when cooking, which had begun to acquire structure and aesthetics thanks to Marie-Antoine Carême, needed practical evolution. Escoffier, inspired by the work of his predecessor, not only preserved his legacy, but also made a real revolution in culinary art, which formed the basis of the modern restaurant business. Born in 1846 in the French town of Villeneuve-Loubet, Auguste began working in cooking as a child. His path was not easy. From a young age, he worked in restaurants, where he learned all the subtleties of the profession. Over time, he became a chef and began to transform the usual cuisine into something new, structured, logical, elegant. Escoffier not only relied on the achievements of Carême, but also rethought them in the context of a rapidly modernizing world. If Carême worked for royal courts and diplomats, then Escoffier created for the bourgeoisie and a new class, wealthy travelers who sought a gastronomic experience in hotels and restaurants. One of Escoffier's main achievements was the simplification and streamlining of culinary techniques. He analyzed Carême's complex, multi-level recipes and turned them into clear, understandable instructions. His dishes remained exquisite, but became more accessible to reproduce. Escoffier believed that true cooking is not exaggerated complexity, but the harmony of taste, the logic of the process, and impeccable presentation. Escoffier became most famous for his work at the Savoy Hotel in London and the Carlton, as well as the luxurious Ritz Grand hotels. It was at the Savoy that he turned the restaurant kitchen into a laboratory of innovation. It was there that legendary dishes were born, which remain classics of world cuisine to this day. For example, peach melba, a dessert made of vanilla ice cream, peaches, and raspberry sauce, was created in honor of the opera diva Nellie Melba. Another example is crêpe Suzette, thin pancakes served with a caramelized sauce based on orange liqueur and butter, which, according to legend, were accidentally created during a dinner for the Prince of Wales. But Escoffier's biggest breakthrough was in the field of kitchen organization. He improved the brigade system, which Carême had started, making it as efficient as possible. For the first time, a clear division of responsibilities was introduced in the kitchen. The sauce cook, saucier, hot dishes, rôtisseur, cold appetizers, garde-manger, desserts, pâtissier, and others. This allowed not only to speed up cooking, but also to ensure a perfect result. even during the busiest hours. His brigade system became so effective that it is still used in professional cooking around the world. Auguste Escoffier was not only a practitioner, but also a deep thinker. He believed that cooking is more than just preparing food. For him, it was a profession that required education, self-discipline, ethics, and aesthetics. That is why he actively supported culinary education. He sought to raise the status of the cook from a craftsman to a full-fledged specialist. Escoffier taught his students, wrote articles, and organized communities of cooks where everyone could exchange experiences and improve their skills. In 1903, Escoffier published his main work, the book Le Guide Culinaire, the Culinary Guide. This volume became the Bible for professional cooks. It contains over 5,000 recipes, describes the rules of serving, kitchen organization, as well as etiquette, and even the logistical aspects of the restaurant business. It is important that this book was not written for housewives. Like most cookbooks of that time, it was addressed to professionals who wanted perfection. This approach influenced the development of culinary schools and training systems, shaping modern professional gastronomy. Escoffier also paid considerable attention to food safety and hygiene, which was a pioneering approach at the time. He believed that the chef should not only cook deliciously, but also be responsible for the cleanliness, organization, and ethics of the team. It was he who introduced the rule mise en place, everything in its place, which is an integral part of kitchen preparation today. The highest recognition of his merits was that the King of England, Edward VII, awarded him the Legion of Honor, an extremely rare honor for a cook at that time. This became a symbol that cooking officially entered the circle of respected professions. Escoffier died in 1935, leaving behind not only dishes but also an entire philosophy: to cook simply but with soul, to serve with respect, to work with dignity. His ideas live on in every restaurant hall, in every culinary school, in every cook who aims to achieve mastery. Let's move to America in the mid-20th century, a time when the gastronomic scene in the United States was far from diverse and sophisticated. The basis of the diet of American households was semi-finished products, canned food, simple sandwiches, and a dish called meat with 3 side dishes, a traditional dinner without any special frills. It was during this period, at the height of the conservative approach to food, that a figure appeared on television screens who changed the perception of cooking for millions: Julia Child. Julia was not a chef with many years of experience, nor did she have a rich culinary heritage from her ancestors. She was born in California in 1912, and until the age of 30, there was little to indicate that her name would go down in the history of gastronomy. Everything changed during her stay in France, a country that charmed her with its cuisine, culture, and attitude towards food. Studying at the legendary Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School in Paris, Julia discovered a whole universe of new tastes, techniques, and philosophies of food preparation. Her inspiration was so strong that she decided to do everything possible to share this experience with her homeland. Returning to the United States, Julia Child, along with co-authors Louisette Berthold and Simone Beck, began working on her first cookbook, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. Published in 1961, this book became a real breakthrough. It was the first of its kind. Instead of the short, detailless recipes that Americans were used to, Child offered detailed instructions that explained not only how to cook, but also why it is important to do so. Her approach was revolutionary. She treated the reader with respect as a person capable of achieving high results in cooking, but she became a real star thanks to television. Her show, The French Chef, which first aired in 1963, instantly won over the American audience. Julia was not just a host, she was a living example of how love for cooking can turn an ordinary person into a teacher, experimenter, and even a television icon. She cooked live, was not afraid to make mistakes in front of the camera, often spoke with humor, and always with incredible energy and enthusiasm. Unlike glossy shows with perfect dishes, Julia showed that cooking is a process that can be fun, casual, and creative. She could accidentally spill a pot, not perfectly flip an omelet, or laugh at a minor failure. And that is what viewers loved. They saw in her not a star, but one of their own, who sincerely wanted others to learn to cook with pleasure. Child's influence on American cuisine was enormous. She shattered the stereotype that French cuisine is something too complex and inaccessible. Thanks to her, thousands of people tasted Boeuf Bourguignon for the first time, learned to cook real sauces, and discovered the importance of quality ingredients and basic techniques. She made the concept of gourmet mainstream and accessible, showing that anyone, regardless of experience, can cook exquisitely. In addition, Child made an invaluable contribution to the popularization of culinary education and the profession of chef in the United States. Before her, cooking was often seen as something domestic, routine, and not very prestigious. She gave this sphere a new dignity, making it part of the cultural discourse. After the appearance of her show, the popularity of culinary schools increased, and the profession of chef gained respect. Her work also influenced the development of culinary literature. Julia Child wrote several books that became bestsellers and were translated into many languages. Each of them is not just a collection of recipes, but a masterclass that conveys the spirit of French cuisine and the philosophy of joy from cooking. And even after the end of her television career, Julia remained active in the field of cooking. She participated in many projects, consulted restaurants, supported young cooks, and defended the ideas of natural, quality food. In 2001, she donated her personal kitchen space to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. Today, it is a real shrine for fans of gastronomy. Julia Child died in 2004, but her legacy continues to live on. She inspired an entire generation of cooks, both amateurs and professionals, around the world. The film Julie and Julia, released in 2009 with Meryl Streep in the lead role, brought her figure back into the spotlight, reminding us that cooking is more than just food. It is emotions, culture, a connection between people. As Julia herself said, "Never apologize if something goes wrong. Just serve it with a smile and a glass of wine." Her spirit of lightness, frankness, and love for cooking will forever remain a part of the culinary history of mankind. In the 70s of the XX century, another important culinary revolution was born on the west coast of the United States, which radically changed the perception of food, its origin, and value. Its inspirer was a woman who would later enter the pantheon of great gastronomic innovators, Alice Waters. She was not a chef in the traditional sense of the word. Her culinary education was amateur, based on personal experience, travel, and a deep understanding of food culture. However, it was her philosophy, passion for the natural, and desire to change the approach to food that laid the foundation for a new gastronomic movement, and farm to table. Alice Waters opened her restaurant Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California in 1971. It was not just a restaurant, but a manifesto, a challenge to the system of mass production, standardized food, and global supply chains. Chez Panisse operated on the principle to cook with what grows nearby right now and to do it with respect for nature and the people who grow the food. At a time when most restaurants relied on frozen ingredients or ingredients brought in from other countries, Waters chose a different path: cooperation with local farmers, gardeners, fishermen, and winemakers. Her approach to cooking was radically new. She did not look for complex culinary techniques or exotic ingredients. Instead, she brought the product itself to the fore. If it is a tomato, it must be sun-ripened, picked on time, juicy, and aromatic. If it is fish, it must be fresh, caught this morning, and not a defrosted copy of an ocean creature from another continent. Her cuisine is a symphony of simplicity, harmony, and respect for nature. Over the years, the restaurant Chez Panisse became not just popular, it became a legend. Alice Waters gained recognition as one of the most influential figures in the history of American cuisine. In 2001, Gourmet magazine named her the most influential chef of the last 50 years. Her ideas inspired thousands of restaurants around the world, contributed to the boom in farmers' markets, organic products, seasonal menus, and even changes in legislation regarding school food. Alice never limited herself to just the kitchen. She was actively involved in educational activities. In 1995, she founded the Edible Schoolyard Project, a program for schools that taught children to grow vegetables, care for the soil, cook healthy food, and appreciate the process of eating as part of the culture. She believed that the real gastronomic revolution begins not with restaurants, but with classrooms and school gardens. Her goal is to create a new generation of people who not only know what they eat, but also why it is important. Water's ideas became part of the global environmental discourse. She was one of the first to point out the connection between cooking, ecology, and social justice. She spoke about the impact of agribusiness on climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and soil degradation. Her cuisine became not only delicious, but also political. It defended small farmers, natural resources, and the right of every person to access quality food. Many modern trends in gastronomy have their roots in the philosophy of Alice Waters. This includes the popularity of organic products, the emphasis on seasonality, the development of regional cuisine, and the slow food movement, which opposes fast food and mass catering. Her influence is felt in every restaurant where the chef is proud of local ingredients, in every menu that indicates where the meat or vegetables come from, in every culinary school where they teach not only to fry, but also to understand food. In her numerous interviews, Alice often emphasized, food is not just food, it is our culture, our identity, our attitude to life. Her position was never pretentious or fashionable. It was a deep conviction that returning to simplicity, naturalness, and locality is the only way to a healthy person and planet. Today, Waters continues to work actively, write books, lecture, and advise schools, cities, and even governments on food policy issues. She has received numerous awards, including the Legion of Honor from the French government for her services to gastronomy. Her restaurant, despite decades of existence, remains one of the most authoritative in the world. Ultimately, Alice Waters' legacy is not just a recipe for the perfect arugula salad grown in a neighboring garden. It is a culture of respect for the land, for labor, for one's own body, and for the community. Her culinary revolution is a path to a deeper, conscious life, where food is not just fuel but a source of joy, unity, and harmony. At the beginning of the 21st century, the world of haute cuisine experienced a real revolution that was difficult to compare with any previous gastronomic changes. The name of this revolution is Ferran Adrià, a Spanish chef whose work redefined the boundaries of culinary art. His restaurant, El Bulli, located on the coast of Catalonia, became not just a place to dine. It turned into an incubator of culinary innovation, where food acquired completely new forms, tastes, and meanings. Ferran Adrià entered the culinary world not with a desire to become famous, but with a desire to explore what else can be done with food. His approach was based on combining cooking with science. He was one of the first to experiment with chemical reactions, textures, and physical properties of ingredients, which later became known as molecular gastronomy. Although Adrià himself considered this term limited and used instead the concept of deconstructive cuisine, la cocina deconstruida. At El Bulli, familiar dishes were transformed beyond recognition. Instead of the usual tomato soup, you could get a tomato foam instead of a traditional omelet, a transparent gel with the taste of egg, and the dessert could be served in the form of an aromatic foam or a crunchy nitrogen granule. But behind every such visual trick was a deep idea: to give a person a new gastronomic experience, to surprise, to evoke emotions, to make them remember the taste of childhood or see a familiar dish from a completely different perspective. One of Adrià's key concepts is deconstruction. It consisted of taking a classic dish, breaking it down into basic tastes and elements, and then reassembling it in a new form. For example, an ordinary potato tortilla could turn into a light foam that retains the characteristic taste but has a completely different texture. This approach required not only culinary skill, but also in-depth knowledge of physics, chemistry, and biology. That is why Adrià collaborated with scientists, technologists, and designers. His cuisine became the embodiment of creative freedom. El Bulli had no permanent menu. Each season, the team invented more than 30 new dishes, which were served in the form of a gastronomic performance with 40 servings. This restaurant was open to guests only a few months a year, and the rest of the time the team devoted to research, experiments, and the creation of new ideas. It was almost impossible to book a dinner at El Bulli. Demand exceeded the number of seats hundreds of times. In 2011, El Bulli was closed. But this was not the end, but, on the contrary, a new beginning. Adrià transformed the project into El Bulli Foundation, a center for culinary research and innovation. His goal is to preserve, systematize, and develop gastronomic culture. He created Bullipedia, a global knowledge base about cooking, which should become a tool for training future generations of chefs. Ferran Adrià is not just a cook. He is a thinker who has translated cuisine into the plane of intellectual dialogue. His approach influenced tens of thousands of chefs around the world. Such famous restaurants as Noma in Copenhagen, Alinea in Chicago, the Fat Duck in Great Britain were largely inspired by his approach. A new generation of chefs appeared who are not afraid to break the rules, combine the incompatible, and explore cooking as an art form. It is important to emphasize that despite the complexity and technicality of his cuisine, Adrià always emphasized the essence of the dish is in the taste. All experiments made sense only when the result brought pleasure to the person. His gastronomy was not to surprise for the sake of show, but to evoke sincere emotions: surprise, nostalgia, joy. His contribution was recognized by many awards, including the title of the best chef in the world, according to Restaurant magazine, and El Bulli itself was recognized as the best restaurant on the planet 5 times. However, Adrià's greatest legacy is a new way of thinking about food. He proved that cuisine is not only tradition, but also innovation, not only repetition, but also creativity. Today, Adrià's ideas live on not only in fine restaurants. His influence can be seen even in how we perceive food at home. Willingness to experiment, try new things, combine different cuisines of the world, pay attention to texture, aroma, and presentation. Ferran Adrià is not just a name in culinary history. It is a symbol of an era in which cuisine ceased to be just about food and became a sphere where science, emotions, art, and technology combine. And thanks to him, we can talk today about gastronomy as a language that can convey ideas, evoke feelings, and change the world. So, what can we say at the end of our journey into the history of culinary revolutions? Were these changes inevitable? Were these people random figures on the gastronomic chessboard? On the one hand, the evolution of cooking is part of the general progress of mankind. Technologies are changing, new products are appearing, trade routes are expanding, and new social classes are forming. All this could not but affect what and how we eat. On the other hand, behind every important change there are specific people, brave, persistent, creative individuals who were not afraid to go against the tide, experiment, and bring their ideas to life. Marie-Antoine Carême, Auguste Escoffier, Julia Child, Alice Waters, Ferran Adrià are just a few examples of such revolutionaries. Each of them in their time challenged existing norms, expanded the boundaries of what is possible, and inspired others to new achievements. But their revolution is not only about the past. Their ideas and approaches continue to live and inspire modern chefs, restaurateurs, and just lovers of delicious food. Today, we see how their principles are embodied in new forms. The revival of local cuisine and farm products, which is a direct consequence of Alice Waters' ideas. The emergence of gastronomic startups that use technology and scientific approaches, like Ferran Adrià once did, to create something fundamentally new. the popularization of culinary shows and blogs, where everyone can feel a bit like Julia Child, experimenting in their own kitchen. Respect for the traditions and history of cooking, based on the fundamental principles laid down by Carême and Escoffier. Cooking is a dynamic field that is constantly evolving. The history of gastronomy is not just a list of dishes and names, but a fascinating story about human ingenuity, creativity, and the desire for self-expression through food. So, remembering the past, let's boldly step into the future, because who knows what culinary revolutions await us? And who do you consider the greatest culinary revolutionary? Which culinary revolution impressed you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this video, give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click on the bell so you do not miss new interesting releases about the world of cooking. See you soon!